Hey, welcome to Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I am trying to be better. A few weeks back, I had a funny encounter with my son. I went upstairs to help him get up and encourage him to get dressed for the day. And after I did that, he started in on some kind of a response. Now, I wish I could provide the details of this response, but it was absolutely insane. It was completely incoherent. A great word for this is circumlocution. Go look it up. But this is exactly what he did. He strung together 500 words that were completely random, that had nothing to do with one another. It's as if he was just reading random words that were being presented before his eyes to see if he could do it correctly. It was crazy. And when he finally took a breath, I jumped in and I said, "Buddy, you sound like a crazy person. I need you to just get ready for the day." And immediately he got defensive and he scowled at me and he said, "No, I don't." And he held that scowl. And a few seconds later, it softened. And he kind of looked away and then he looked back at me and he said, "Well, I mean, I am only 7. And I lost it. For me, that was so funny. You might not appreciate that, but it was so funny to me because I got to witness my son in this moment reflect on what he had just done and realize I did sound like a crazy person. I don't even know what I was saying. My dad called me out and he's right. But you know what? I can justify this because I want to be big, but I'm only 7. So yeah, I'm going to make mistakes and yeah, I'm going to sound crazy from time to time because I am only 7. I got a good kick out of that. But I think what my son did is something that we can all relate to and something that we should almost follow suit in doing, because on this thing called fatherhood, we often talk about it being a journey. No matter where you're at on the journey, it's a journey. And we're all going to have beginnings. There's a big beginning when you start the journey, but there's different beginnings along the way. And there's going to be moments where you do something wrong and you make a mistake, but you're in the beginning and you need to remember that. So today's episode is all going to be about encouraging you to not despise your small beginnings. I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. I appreciate it personally, but I also love the fact that you care about being the dad your children need you to be, and so you tune into the podcast. But while I have you, I want to ask you something. I would like you to consider becoming a monthly supporter of Fathering Our Future. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe it's just $5 a month. For you, that's a cup of coffee. But for another dad, that's a resource, a benefit, or a blessing. So ask yourself if you're able to do that and then respond. Again, it can be as small as $5 a month. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm done. I'm not going to push the envelope. There's a link at the bottom of the description. You can click that and you can go to the support page and then you can make your contribution there. Again, thank you. I'm super excited to let you know about my most recent project, a devotional for dads called Following Our Father. As Christian dads, we have no better example than our Father in heaven on how to be a dad. As a father reading the scriptures, I cannot help but see how he truly is our Father. So in this devotional, I go through 30 qualities and attributes of God. You can take it one day at a time and knock it out in a month, or you can take the time that you need to absorb who our Father is so that you can be the dad that you're called to be and be the dad that your children need you to be. This is available to you. You can check the description to find the link to get your copy. You can even get a copy for someone else. But this is a resource for you that will bless you. It will impact you as a father, and it will impact your home. So get your copy of Following Our Father. Get it today. Okay, our scripture for this week, Zechariah chapter 4, verse number 10. I'm only going to give you the first little half of this because plumb lines and Zerubbabel's hand really have nothing to do with your life present day. But this is what it says. It says, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." Now, I realize that this has a particular context, and I am usually a stickler about staying with the context of a particular verse. But I think I can still justify the fact that the Lord rejoices to see the work begin in you as a dad. God created the home, the institution of marriage. He created the concept of the family. And so when you embrace your identity as a dad, which again, he created and he himself holds, when you embrace the identity of a dad and you become intentional about being present and engaged and proactive, I think he rejoices when you do that. He rejoices to see that work begin in you. But there is a word spoken that I am going to use as a word spoken to us today in this context, and that is do not despise your small beginnings. I want you to remember that. Now, I do want to add this in before we talk more about specifically not despising small beginnings. This is the week of Thanksgiving, and I think thankfulness and gratitude are key on this journey called fatherhood, especially when it comes to not despising where you're at. You need to be grateful for your identity as a dad. You need to be grateful for your children that make you a dad. And you need to be grateful for the journey that is ahead, this journey called fatherhood. You need to be grateful for the fact that you have the opportunity to embark on this journey, that you have another day and new breath that allows you to live and experience this process. Be grateful for that, because gratitude will help you overcome anxiety. This is what the Apostle Paul writes about to the church of Philippi. He says, don't be anxious for anything, but instead, with thanksgiving, you go to God with your requests and your petitions. And it's doing that in thanksgiving that the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will settle into your life. And when you make mistakes along the way, things get chaotic and you get burdened down and you feel like a failure, you really could use peace in those moments. So be grateful, not just that you get to throw down on turkey and ham, but be grateful that you're a dad, that you have a beautiful family, and that you have a wonderful opportunity to embark on this journey called fatherhood. Now, I do want to say that this episode of encouragement is going to be for dads in two different manners, if I can say it this way. One, maybe you're a father who has not been intentional about fatherhood at all. Maybe you have been focused on your career and your hobbies, and that's where you've put all of your time and effort, and you realize that I've rejected my kids. I've been absent from the home, and this is not right. I've got to change this. You're starting the journey, and it's going to be difficult starting probably where you're at. You're going to have some rough beginnings, but this is for you. Don't despise your small beginnings. And for the other dads out there, maybe you've been intentional about this thing called fatherhood. But as you travel this journey, there's going to be moments where you realize, I think I'm doing this wrong. I think I need to change this. I think I need to start to prepare for this. And that start, that beginning, it's still going to be small and it's still going to be difficult. And there's going to be moments that you want to say, no, I can't do it this way. Don't despise your small beginnings. So here's the thing about this. This is a word that's spoken to you directly. You are the one who needs to not despise your small beginnings, because newsflash, other people will. Other people will look at you and they will point the finger and say, I know you. I know how you've been as a father. I know that you have struggled with anger. I know that you didn't have the talk with your father when you were a kid, and you're probably not going to offer it to your children as a dad. I know that you grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, and you're probably not very good with your money. There's no way you're going to be able to teach your kids how to be good financial stewards of their income as they grow up. People are going to point the finger because they think they know you, and they're going to forecast, and they're going to throw their ideas and their perspectives your way, and they're going to remind you that, no, you can't do this. But the word is spoken to you. You are the one who cannot despise your small beginnings. You have to realize, kind of like my son, that you're in the early stages of whatever it is that you are focusing on, whether it's the journey as a whole or whether it's just one specific point. It's spoken to you. As long as you will not despise your small beginnings, you will make it to the destination. The only way that you stop becoming a father is you walk out on the identity. You have to quit. You have to walk out on this thing entirely. The moment you give up is the moment that you are done. But if you get knocked down and you keep standing back up, you're still on the path. You're still where you need to be. So don't despise your small beginnings. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough. If you're in the situation to where you've been absent from the home and now all of a sudden you're trying to be present, just buckle up. Because depending on the age of your kids, if they're teenagers, that's going to be exceptionally tough. Because at this point, they're starting to figure out that they're smarter than you. At least they're starting to think that. But by the time they get 12 to 14, this is when they have the ability cognitively to start to hypothesize things. This is why high schoolers can think, this is why they think that they can solve all the world's problems. They don't have any of the experience. They've not been thrown out into the real world, but they can look at something from the outside and they can say, oh, this is very easy to fix. I don't know why this is such a big deal. This is ridiculous. Give them some time, but just know that it's going to be hard to get through to someone like that. They have no life experience. They are out of touch with reality and they think they know it all. I remember what it was like being a teenager, and that's how I felt. So if that's where you're at, don't despise your small beginnings. What you have to do is keep putting one foot in front of the other. This is a baby step process. You have got to stick with it. You have got to be faithful. You have got to give it a lot of time. And one day, when they get a dose of reality and things start to settle in and everything starts to align in their head, they will look back and they'll say, you know what? Yeah, Dad wasn't there when I was a kid. He didn't come to the baseball games, but around the time I was 13 or 14, he was there. The last 10 years, he's been great. And I know that sucks to hear. Like maybe it's going to take you a decade to get where you want to be with your kids. But in the grand scheme of things, it's probably, no, it absolutely is worth it. So don't despise the small beginnings. Hey, if you're a new dad or choosing to embark on a fresh start as a father, I have a gift for you. I wrote a book a while back called Cut the Crap, Direct Tips for Becoming a Dad. I don't teach you how to change a diaper. That one's totally on you. But I do talk about 5 elements that you need to focus on as a dad if you want to be the dad your children need you to be. Now, this is completely free. It is yours. There's no strings attached. The only thing that I'd like you to consider is if the book brings value to you as a father, make a contribution by going to fatheringourfuture.com/support. But you don't have to. Again, it is a free gift from me to you. The link is in the description after the end of the episode. Click it, get your copy, and I pray that it helps you. Or maybe you're more like me, and I hate saying this, more like me, because I feel like I put myself up here on some sort of a pedestal, and that's not how I view myself. But I have tried to be intentional about this thing called fatherhood. I have tried to be engaged with my kids. I have tried to have conversations with them. I have tried to be present with them. I try to do the daddy-daughter dates. I try to have boys' trips with my son. I try to teach them things about God and the Bible and be intentional about prayer and devotion with my kids. I try. Am I perfect? Far from it. But I'm trying to put forth that effort. I'm not at the beginning of this intentional journey and perspective on fatherhood. I'm not there. And even not being there, it's still not always the easiest. But on other things, I've had to wrestle with. I've had to struggle with. I've been in the beginning phase of some things. One of the things that comes to my mind, and I'll just open up about this, is spanking. And this is a conversation that a lot of people freak out about, and I don't know why you freak out about something like this, and then you never get to a good resolve. So rather than get into a huge argument, I'm just going to talk about this from my perspective. I will say this. I have spanked my kids. I have spanked 3 of the 4, and probably because the 4th is 4 months at this point. You shouldn't spank a baby. I think that's ridiculous. But I have spanked the other 3 kids. Not a lot, but I have. And the more I think about this as a father, the more I struggle with, is this the right way? This is what was modeled for me. My sister got a whole lot more spankings than I did because I was a better child. At least I was better at hiding things from my parents. So 3 or 4 spankings in my entire life. I got them, but some people got whooped up. Like my father tells me some stories with his mother. He grew up with a single mom, and she had 6 kids in the home, and they were picking their own switches and using spoons and using belts, and they laugh about it now, so they're in good spirits. But it's very, very funny to hear the war stories of his childhood. But I didn't have that experience. But I'm to a place now where I'm focusing on as I discipline my kids, what I'm really doing is I'm discipling my kids. So whenever there is disorder, my thought process is, let me pause, take a breath, and in this moment, let me think, how do I disciple my children? And when I do that, spanking my kids rarely comes up. If I'm going to disciple my kids, how does that disciple them? If anything, it is used if the consequence, the punishment fits the crime, if you will. So if my son is too rough with his sisters, hits them, does something like that, at this point, I feel like spanking is not out of order. Do I spank him every time he does that? No, I don't. But I have. When there was just complete and utter chaos and nobody can respond, and unless I like absolutely lose my mind too, I can't even be heard. There are moments that, yes, I walk in and I give a spanking. Is it right? I question that. But I'm at a place where I just don't know. I don't have it all figured out. And I'm in the beginning phases of trying to determine, how do I best disciple and discipline my children in moments of chaos, in moments of disorder? How do I do this? Most of the time I have conversations with my kids because I understand that my kids are smart enough to hear me and to learn. My kids can see, they can learn from example, they can learn from my instruction. I think that's how I disciple my kids. Even if I ever do spank the kids, there is instruction that follows that. That spanking for me is just an opportunity really to get them to just settle. And maybe that's not even the right way. I don't know. I'm not talking about spankings to have an episode on spankings. I'm talking about spankings right now because I'm at a place in my fatherhood journey where I question if that is the right way to disciple my children. Now, some people will tell me you got to do it because if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. You look at the verses about that, there's a context that I don't think people take into consideration sometimes. I think you just beat your kid senseless like they're an animal. I think you're missing the point personally. But some people think that, hey, if you're going to raise godly kids, you got to spank them all the time. They mess up, they get a spanking. I had friends, didn't matter what they did, they got a spanking. If they weren't allowed to chew gum in church, they chewed gum in church. It wasn't like, hey, you're just going to lose this, or hey, you're going to spit the gum out. It was like, no, you're going to do that, you're going to lose that, and I'm going to whip your butt. Happened all the time. That's how some people chose to raise. And I'm not here to say that if you're older and that's how you've done things, shame on you. I'm simply opening up with where I'm at in this thing called fatherhood. That I'm not at the beginning of, let me be an intentional dad, but I'm starting to question some of the methods. And I'm starting to wonder, is there a better way? And I'm starting down a different path of how do I discipline and disciple my kids in a way that truly is effective? And questioning, is spanking a part of that? Am I perfect? I'm not. Do I try to not spank my kids? 100%. I try. Have I failed at that? I have. I've probably failed 3 or 4 times since I've started this path. I do my absolute best to not spank my kids because I don't think they need it. And that's where I'm at. And people will say, you're an idiot. People can say that all they want. But I'm trying to do what I feel is best as a father for my children. That is most in line with what God has called me to do as a dad. So the point in this is, yes, if you are new to this thing called fatherhood, or you're new to being intentional as a father, don't despise the small beginnings. You're going to have plenty of hiccups along the way. But if you're further down the path and you are trying to deal with something different, maybe you realize that the way that you raise your voice or you lose your temper with your kids is a problem and you're trying to figure out how to stop. You're going to still mess up, but don't despise the beginning and initial effort, the small beginning in attempting to do that. Maybe you're where I'm at. Is spanking the right way to actually disciple my children? Does it actually teach them meaning and lessons? Does it get the moral across? I just don't feel like it does. And so I'm struggling with that, but I'm not going to despise my small beginning on this particular journey as a father. So whatever it is for you, throw it in the mix and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm questioning this and I'm trying a different method and I'm going to try to do this. And people are going to say, you know what? This is ridiculous or this is wrong. Don't let other people have input into your life if they are criticizing you. If people offer critique in a way that you ought to listen to it, it will typically come across as, I've been there, I've done that, this is what I tried, you might try this. That's when you should listen, because that's coming from a place of wisdom, and it's wisdom to receive that wisdom. But people who say, no, you're stupid, you need to do this, it's a critique, and the reality is they're probably covering up a multitude of horrible habits and mistakes themselves. So that can go, I was going to say in one ear and out the other, but it just needs to be blocked initially. Don't even hear it. Receive wisdom when you are given wisdom. You might try this. Comes from a place of wisdom, comes across wisely. Receive that. That's wise. Block out the other nonsense. But other people are going to criticize you, and they're going to despise what you're trying to do. I want to encourage you today to not despise your small beginnings. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank you for your word. We thank you that you are with us in this journey called fatherhood, that you rejoice in the work that's beginning in our lives, the work that we are trying to do in fulfilling the mission of fatherhood, and that is to equip and to disciple our children to be a part of your mission in a greater capacity than ourselves, that we're aiming to be the fathers that you have called us to be, that you've made us to be, and the dads that our children need us to be. God, we recognize that you are with us, and help us, God, to be encouraged on this journey. There are going to be plenty of times we make mistakes. There's going to be plenty of times that we question what we're doing and the direction that we're heading. But God, help us to have that Frankie mentality that, well, I am only 7. I'm at a place at the beginning and I'm going to make mistakes. God, help us to just give grace to ourselves, when we make mistakes. Because if we're going to continue on this thing called fatherhood and we're going to become the dads that our children need us to be, we're going to need a lot of grace along the way. Not only grace from you, but also grace from ourselves. So God, help us to be encouraged as we pursue this path where we are the dads that our children need us to be, and help us to give ourselves grace. Help us to do this in full recognition that you are with us, and to never, ever despise our small beginnings. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, it's Thanksgiving. I don't want to keep you. I want you to go throw down on whatever it is you're going to throw down, but I want you to be grateful for your identity as a dad, for your family, and for where you're going, the journey that waits for you, that every day you get an opportunity to embark on. Be grateful for that, because you're needed. You messing up but staying on the path and trying to get there to the destination, your family needs that. Your children need you to do that. You might have a bad run. You might have a bad season, but keep trying. Stay on the path, because you are a difference maker and a dynasty builder. You're a dad. Nobody can take that away from you. And your children need you. They need their dad. And so does the future. We have an impact, not only in our home, but that impact ripples and goes out to the community, and to the country, and to the world. You have a bigger role in this entire thing than you realize. So stay committed to this thing called fatherhood. And if you need help along the way, I'm here for you. You can reach me at fatheringourfuture@gmail.com, and I will help you however I can. But for now, I want to thank you for being with me. This is Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I hope you'll join me next time. Hey, one more time, I want to thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you listen, and consider leaving a nice review, because I would appreciate that. But if you're not connected to Fathering Our Future on social media, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and there you're going to get some additional content on a more regular basis that you don't always get here on the podcast. Now, the last thing that I would like to ask of you is that you would consider becoming a financial partner of Fathering Our Future, because dads make a difference, and dads are not disposable. Dads are vital, and they are essential, and they are needed. And the impact that dads make doesn't just reside in the home, but it has a ripple effect that goes to churches and communities and culture. And I'm inviting you to be a part of equipping and empowering and educating dads to be the dad that God has called them to be and that their children need them to be. You can become a financial partner with Fathering Our Future. It can be a one-time contribution, a monthly commitment. But by doing that, you play a direct role in impacting dads. You can check the link in the description below. You can pray about it. You can get on board. And I thank you in advance for becoming a part of Fathering Our Future in a special and a dynamic way. God bless you.